So I'm really excited to be here again with MCASB to host another workshop. I'm very excited for today's seed paper tutorial. I just want to preface it with obviously feel free to do a lot of the prep work for this project during the tutorial itself, but since this tutorial specifically does involve the use of blenders, I'm going to ask everyone to maybe hold off on that and maybe finish everything after the tutorial is over. I will walk you through all the steps that are necessary for it to teach you how to make the seed paper, but it might not be the easiest thing to do it simultaneously as I am. But first, I just want to go over the materials that you will need for this project. First off, you're going to want to have some paper trash. So anything from notebook paper, construction paper, old receipts, newspaper, thin cardboard such as toilet paper rolls, egg cartons, paper towels are great. The one thing though that I do want to recommend is to not use thick cardboard. So anything that kind of looks like this is a little bit too thick for seed paper. You're going to want just mostly regular paper in your seed paper. It's going to make it a lot more easy to work with. Also, if you're wanting to make your seed paper any specific color other than a grayish white, which is what normal paper will kind of turn out looking like, feel free to incorporate different colors of construction paper in with your paper trash findings, and that will give it a different color. So you'll want paper, as I said. You'll also want a blender. I personally do not have a blender right now, but I do have a nifty immersion blender, and it works just as well. So either a regular blender or an emulsion blender. You're going to want a rolling pin. You're going to want a mesh strainer, a rubber spatula of sorts, parchment paper, paper towels, and of course seeds. Oh, and water. You'll definitely want water as well. So those are all the materials that we'll need to start. And before we kind of dive in a little bit more, I just want to go over a few other things. For this tutorial, for this project, you can pretty much use any sort of seeds that you want, which is really great. I just highly recommend that before you choose what type of seeds, if you are using something like wildflowers or something of that sort, please make sure that for your area, it is not an invasive species, especially if you are going to send or use these seed papers as gifts. You want to make sure that if someone plants it in their yard, that it's not necessarily going to take over by any means or anything like that. For the Santa Barbara area, there's a great list of invasive species on the Santa Barbara Botanic Gardens website, which we have linked. But most wildflower like seed packets and stuff aren't going to be invasive, so you can kind of stick to that. So that's kind of what I wanted to preface everything with.
Lily, I'm sorry, I have a quick question about blenders.
Yes.
Someone wanted to know if you could use a magic bullet, or, these days there are all these different types of blenders that are available to us.
Any type of blender will work. You just want to make sure that it has, a good motor and a blade. But anything from a food processor to just a regular blender, magic bullet, immersion blender like I have, anything like that will work. So,
and is there a substitute for a mesh strainer that you would suggest?
Yeah, you can also use a colander if it has tiny enough holes. You don't want a colander with really big holes. Also, if you have cheesecloth, that could work. But I found that mesh strainers kind of work the best, and those are fairly inexpensive if you can find them at the grocery store and things like that. So,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, let's get started, shall we? So I am using a large jar since I'm not using a blender. And so what you want to do is, like I said, you want to gather all of your paper products that you're using, and you're going to want to tear them into about inch-sized pieces. You don't necessarily want them too big because you kind of want to help the process along, but you just kind of want to tear everything up, put it all together, It doesn't really matter what you use as long as, like I said, it is paper. Like I said earlier, to not use a cardboard that is too thick, but it is very good to use egg cartons since egg cartons are already biodegradable. So they're a really great resource as well for this project. So what you want to do is you want to take your paper and you want to make sure that it fills about halfway of whatever container that you're using, whether it be the blender, whether it be a jar, whatever you're using, make sure that it's about halfway, because we are about to add some water to this, and the water should be about twice as much as whatever paper you have. So 1 part paper to 2 parts water. And this will make a really nice, very wet mixture that will be beneficial in the long run. So I personally really like using hot water first. The hot water kind of helps break down the paper a little bit, but also warm water will do as well. So I have a kettle full of hot water that I'm just going to grab. And so after everything is set, all my paper is in here. I'm just going to pour in the water.
And Julie, I mean, I'm assuming you can just use tap water or whatever's available.
Tap water is great.
Is there any, I mean, is there any reason you would use any other liquid? Like, would another liquid add a different, I mean, you don't want to use anything
definitely
sticky.
Not anything sticky. You'll want to use water just because there's other sorts of liquids, there isn't really any benefit to it, for instance, because it's just paper. And so I used all my hot water, and now I'm going to add some tap water, some lukewarm tap water to fill it up the rest of the way. All right. So once you have it filled up to the top of your container, that's when you're going to want to turn on your blender. For one, I'm going to use the immersion blender. I apologize for the loud noise this is about to make. If you're using an immersion blender like I am, just make sure to kind of periodically, there will be paper that gets stuck in these holes on the side of it. And same goes for if you're using any other sort of blender, just to make sure that all of the paper doesn't get stuck at the bottom. And you'll want to make sure that the paper is ground up really finely into a nice pulp. If you think that it's been blended well enough, even blend it a little bit more. It can never hurt for it to be really well blended. That's the one tip that I will definitely go out and say that makes it a little bit easier.
And Julie, just to reiterate, it's how many parts paper to how many parts water?
1 part paper to 2 parts water. And it's going to look a little bit weird. When you're doing it, you're going to think, wow, this is very watery or something along those lines. But trust me, you'll want the moisture, you'll want the water. It's going to seem really weird that this is going to end up being paper, but it'll work, trust me.
And I'm so sorry. Is there any benefit to like letting the paper soak for any amount of time, or because you started blending pretty quickly?
Sometimes I do let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, but obviously we don't want to sit here and watch. But no, it does help it along to kind of give it time to get a little bit softer, to break down a little bit, but also, you know, the blender can also help along with that. All right. You want to make sure that there's no big clumps. It's almost getting there. If there's any big clumps, you just want to keep blending it until it's that fine pulp.
Julie, someone asked, what about magazine paper, which some of it has like a coating, and it can be kind of shiny and
Yeah,
slick.
so magazine paper does work as well, newspaper, pretty much anything that's kind of a thin paper. Obviously, if it has any sort of really harsh wax coating on it, I would deter from using that. But magazine paper is totally fine for this as well. So it's a great way to use up scrap paper, magazines you don't want, old newspaper, like I said, egg cartons. It's just a really great way to get rid of a lot of excess trash that we all have. So. Right. All right. So this is about good for right now.
Have you ever added coloring, like to color the final product?
I have. If you do want to color the final product and have it be a different color than this whitish gray color, all you have to do is add pieces of construction paper of your choice. Like for instance, recently I made a really nice red seed paper that I'm using for Valentine's Day. And all you have to do is tear up colored construction paper of your choosing and add it to whatever paper that you have going in your jar.
Would any sort of dye create a color?
I would recommend not using dye such as food coloring or anything like that, because the paper isn't going to absorb it very well, and also it would probably then bleed too much onto your surface or whatever you're working with. The nice thing about construction paper is that even though it does give off a little bit of color, it's not going to heavily bleed and make your workstation or make your paper or anything like that a huge mess. And that's something we want to kind of stray away from doing. But trust me, the construction paper works great for making it a different color. So yeah, one more time. All right. Once that is nice and blended to your liking, you're going to want to then take your mixture. And you're going to want to add your seeds. Please make sure to not add your seeds before blending it, during blending it. Whatever you do not want to blend your seeds. You want to make sure that those seeds stay intact, so they can be used, so they don't sprout, so they don't get destroyed in the process. So once you have your nice little paper pulp, you're going to take your flower seeds. I am using 2 packets of 4 ounces of wildflower seeds. This mix is for saving the bees, which I think is really important. If you can get a mix that is beneficial to help bees right now, I would highly recommend that. And so you're just going to pour the seeds in.
Where did you order your seeds?
I just got them at the hardware store at Ace Hardware, but you can buy them, any sort of like Home Depot or Lowe's, or sometimes even have them at the grocery store. But they're pretty accessible. But hardware stores is normally a good bet, or you can order them online if you're looking for something specific. So once those are in the paper mixture, you're going to want to take a spatula or a spoon and mix it really well and good so it's thoroughly incorporated.
Yeah, and someone who's joined us, Kiki, Kimberly, and James, mentioned that buying seeds at the Botanic Gardens is great because they have the offer of the local seeds, making sure that they're native plants and nothing invasive, as you were saying.
This is very true.
And what's the ratio for seeds? Is there a specific ratio?
There isn't a specific ratio. It's just you want a really good big handful in your pulp mixture. So for a size such as this or a blender, I normally recommend using about 2 packets of seeds for this. And like I said, those packets were 4 ounces each to give you a better idea about things. But also, if you just want to eyeball it, it's not anything of an exact science. You can put as many or as few seeds that you'd like into it. But I think that 2 packets for something this size is pretty good.
And I'm sorry, another question came through. How do you get the seeds to not all fall to the bottom or collect, in one area?
Yeah, so just by mixing it a little bit like I did, you don't want to overly mix it and you want to be a little bit gentle with it. Luckily, there's enough paper and pulp and stuff where they're not going to necessarily fall to the bottom, which is really great. So then what you're going to want to do is you're going to take a mesh strainer, and I normally do this over my sink, but for tutorial sake, I'm going to be straining some of it into this Tupperware container. So what you're then going to want to do is just pour your mixture in. And then you'll want to take your spatula and kind of help it along to kind of drain most of the liquid. You want to get most of the liquid out, but you still don't want to have it be too dry, because that little bit of liquid is going to help you later on when we roll this out.
And are you like actually squeezing the liquid out of the paper?
Yeah. I am. I'm squeezing it with my spatula. Sometimes I even take my hand and squeeze it, and I find that also gets a lot of the liquid out. So whatever kind of works for you. So you want to get a lot of that liquid out. Put that in a bowl for right now. I'm just going to strain a little bit more.
Okay, I have a crazy question.
Yes.
What about essential oils?
Essential.
Would it scent the paper? Would it ruin the seeds? Would it make a mess?
I'm actually not sure about that. I mean, you can try it and see if it works. I don't think it would necessarily affect the consistency of the paper, but that could be something cool to try. I have never tried that, but it is a good idea if it works.
You could have a scented love note for Valentine's.
A lavender love note to go with your lavender seeds.
Yes.
All right. So, squeeze a little bit more with my hands. Get as much water out as I can at the moment. All right. So once you've squeezed most of the water out, you want to transfer that to another bowl. I'm going to finish the rest of this later, but for the time being, I'm just going to set this to the side along with the water. So once you have your pulp, your pulpy paper mixture, it's going to be very nice and wet and damp with all the nice seeds in it. You're then going to want to take a piece of parchment paper or wax paper, and you're going to want to set that down on your table. And then you're going to want to place a paper towel on top of that. Once you have that laid down, you're going to want to take your paper mixture and you're going to want to spread it out on the paper towel. I don't recommend dumping it on and kind of trying to spread it out, because it doesn't have any sort of elasticity to it. We will be rolling this out, and when normally you think of rolling something out, the things that come to mind are clay or dough, and those things have a lot of elasticity to them, but since it's just paper and water and seeds, you're not going to get that. So I also recommend taking the mixture and kind of breaking it up with your fingers a little bit, because that's going to help it along and help you get the paper as thin as possible, because that's one of the goals here. If it's going to be a little bit too thick, that's fine. It'll still work. It's just going to be a little bit harder to make certain projects out of them, but you'll still be able to make stuff out of it. But what I have found is that the thinner that you can roll out the paper, the better. And so I'm just going to break up.
Julie, do you have to use paper towel, or can you use like a cloth?
You can use cloth towels as well. They do work. I just find that paper towels make it a little bit easier when rolling it out, because sometimes the cloth towels get a little bit stuck, but you can totally use cloth towels to do this. That is very doable.
Are you able to tilt your camera down at all just so we can
hold it up?
Yeah.
So as you can see, I'm breaking apart the pieces and I'm putting them on the paper towel. And after I kind of get it in the shape that I want, I will start pressing it down.
And presumably the wax paper or the parchment paper is just to collect liquid.
Yeah.
keep it from going on your
so
surface?
the paper towel or regular towel, that will help absorb a lot of the liquid, but then also the parchment paper will help it, so it kind of also gets whisked away as well. So it doesn't stay in one place when you're rolling everything out. So I'm just gonna put a little bit more, break it up with my fingers. All right. So once I kind of have it in the shape I want to press it down with my hands to kind of help this process move along. Like I said, if you see any holes, you'll just want to press some of the pulp mixture into those holes.
And so is this the time when you want to create the shape that you're going for?
Yeah, I normally, when I do the rollout method, I like to make a rectangle or a circle or something like that. And then after it dries, I'll cut it out into different shapes that I want. There's also another method that I will show momentarily of other ways that you can do things. But as you can see right now, I have it kind of in a circle. I'm just patching up any last holes that I may have and pressing it into the paper. So it's going to look like a cohesive unit like this. I'm just going to do a little bit for now, but you can make it really big. You can roll out really small pieces. It's really up to you and what you want to do. So after you have that, and it's all on your piece of paper like that, you're going to take your other towel or paper towel and set it on top, and then another piece of parchment and set it on top of that.
And Julie, someone has a question. If you wanted to add objects to the paper, like dried leaves, dried flowers, and things like that, would you do that before you roll it?
I would do that afterwards and just press them into my final product, because if you want something whole like a leaf or a flower, it might get a little bit mangled during the rolling out process, or the blending process or something like that. So I would recommend doing that, and if it's for some reason not sticking, maybe just putting a few drops of water on top to press it in, and that should kind of give you the look that you want. So once you have the second paper towel and parchment paper on top of your seed paper, you're going to take a rolling pin and you're going to want to roll it out. Having it rolled out in between the two pieces of paper is not going to make any of the seed paper stick to your rolling pin, but it's also going to help with absorbing all that moisture. So you want to make it really thin. Roll it out nice and good. Like I said, it's very important to try to get the paper as thin as you want it, or as thin as you can. Let's see how it looks. So this looks great. So as you can see, the seed paper is rolled out and it is very, very thin. This is kind of the thickness that I would recommend going for. If it's a little bit thicker, it's fine, but it's just going to be a little bit harder to work with later. So once you have it done, once you have your seed paper rolled out like that, I personally like to then take the paper towel or towel that it's on and transfer it to a cooling rack like you use in the kitchen. If you don't have one though, it's fine. It just kind of helps the drying process move along. Also, I highly recommend drying in a dry, warm place if you can. So the best way to do this is to put it outside on a hot sunny day or something like that. But if you live in a place that's cold right now because it's winter, just leave it in a dry part of your house, or maybe you can use a space heater to help it along. I've done that before and it works great. So that's how you kind of make your seed paper with the rolling out method. And I will also show you that if you are wanting to do it this way, you can also make seed paper with cookie cutters. So it's a very similar process. You're just going to take a paper towel and a small piece of parchment. And you want to take the cookie cutter of your choice. I recommend not using anything super intricate, but whatever you want to do. And again, you just break apart the pieces of the seed paper with your fingers and have it make the shape that you're going for. Try to make it, again, as thin as possible, because this one you're not rolling out. You're just using your fingers to press it into the mold. And this is a great way if you're wanting to make really uniform shapes for a project or an artwork or for gift tags. It's a really great way to do that. So I'm just going to press it into the mold. And like I said, these ones will be thicker, so they will take a little bit longer to dry than if you rolled it out.
What's the longest that one of your pieces has taken to dry?
They normally dry within a day. So I would recommend kind of allowing a day's worth of time, but I've had them dry within, like, you know, a few hours to, if it's a little bit thicker, you know, overnight, it'll have to go. And like I said, having it be in a dry, warm place does really help it along. So once you have it all in your cookie cutter, just do as you do with cookies, take off the mold, and then you have a specific shape of your seed paper. And so when it's all done, I have an example. So this is what it'll look like when it's dry. It's really great. I use these to, like, if I'm writing letters to someone, I slip one of these in. It's great. Then people can plant it. When your rolled out paper, though, is done drying, it's going to have a really nice thin consistency. This is one that I did earlier this week. And you can cut it into whatever shapes or sizes that you'd like. As you can see, it's really thin. It has a thickness and a texture kind of in between a cardstock and a thin cardboard. So that's always great. And I also have an example of some red seed paper I made earlier this week as well. Like I said, I'm using it for some Valentines that I'm making. And all I had to do to make it this lovely color, outside of being this, is add red construction paper to it. It's as simple as that. And as you can see, it does have a really nice color to it. So that's what it'll look like when you're all done and finished. And some projects that I have made with it is that seed paper is great for gift tags, to attach to a gift that you're giving to someone. It's kind of like a second gift, I think. So you can just kind of make that attached to some string onto a bag. There you go, a little gift tag. You can also cut it out into different shapes. I made this little flower that you can give someone or send someone. And then also for upcoming, we have Valentine's Day shortly. So I made a cute little Valentine that says "Be My Valentine" and a little seed paper heart in the center, which then the person can take off and plant in their garden. And with the seed paper, you can totally use ink on it. It'll still be great to plant. So I have that. And I also have some little flowers that I made out of seed paper. Again, the recipient can then take these and plant them. But after you make the seed paper, it's pretty much the world is your oyster as to what projects or crafts or artworks that you want to make with them.
Julia, a question just came through. When you use the rollout method for the drying, you leave the paper on the paper towel.
Yes. And
you put the paper towel with the drying paper on the rack.
Yeah,
you discard the parchment paper that's underneath.
Yeah, you'll want to do that because the paper towel or towel that you're using will continue to kind of to soak up the water that is being drained and everything like that. The wax paper doesn't really do much. Plus, it's kind of gets in the way of being able to air dry. So I just recommend getting rid of that, but it's really great to have it on the towel to absorb some of that moisture.
Can you tell us a bit about the planting of the paper?
Of course.
You have experience doing that?
So when you want to plant the paper, you plant it as if you're planting any sort of seeds when you're starting out. So actually, if you're planting it first in a pot or if you're planting it out in a garden, it's pretty similar to how you do that. Or if you want to like propagate them in a egg carton, which a lot of people do, you just simply break off a piece of your seed paper or however much that you're using, and you just dig a hole, make sure that it's in a place where they'll get a lot of sun, and just use them as you would normally use seeds.
Awesome. Okay, I am going to move over to gallery view. And just as a reminder, we are recording this. So if you feel uncomfortable having your face in the recording, we just ask that you turn your camera off, but we are going to be putting this on our YouTube channel so that people can continue to make seed paper using Julie's great tutorial. If anybody wants to show us their in-progress projects or how things are coming, we'd love to see that. Or if anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask. Julie, I was thinking, and Sarah Dildine, our exhibitions manager who's on the call, had a great suggestion that anybody who would like to share what they've made, oh, look at that. That's looking cool. Anybody who wants to post on their Instagram anything that they've made from today or make from the tutorial, feel free to tag us or at us, and we can put that in our story. That's a beautiful jar of torn up pieces of paper. Yeah, looks like fun over there.
I honestly love this because it gives new life to what would just be trash, and you know, a beautiful way to be able to reuse it. And it turns into that pulpy mess, but then it turns into a great piece of seed paper, you know?
Well, we will be doing a Valentine's Day workshop, and maybe a good idea for that workshop is to make Valentines using the seed paper that people have made. Mm-hmm. That could be something fun.
That could be very fun.
Yeah. All right. If nobody has any other questions, if anything comes up, oh yes, Lauren.
So to get that red color, how much red construction paper did you throw in to kind of get that? Will any little amount have a dramatic effect, or should you do like half red?
So for this shade of red, also depending on how much you use, it'll be lighter or darker. So for instance, you wanted to be more pink, you just use less of the red paper. But for this, I did it kind of a similar amount to what I showed you earlier in that jar. And I put about 2 pieces of red construction paper in it to get this color. So like I said, if you want it lighter, do less. If you want it to be darker, put more. It just kind of all in ratio to that white color. But yeah, it doesn't take that much, and you can make any color you want by adding construction paper.
Any other questions? Oh, someone's asking, is the finished product foldable?
The finished product, it's not really as much foldable as because it is, you know, held together by paper and water and stuff like that. It's really good for like I said, making different sort of shapes and stuff like that. And you can cut out maybe like a rectangle if you're wanting to use it for a card, and pasting it onto a folded piece of paper or something like that, and have that be the front of it. But as far as folding it in half, it is unfortunately going to crumble a little bit, but that's just because of the nature and the thickness of it. Yeah.
Great. Look, we have some amazing, beautiful process shots here. What is that shape? Is it a leaf? Ah, cool.
Nice.
That looks beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a crown.
A crown. That is awesome.
Put some sparkling hair in it to make it shimmer.
You added, wow, it is shiny. That's such a good idea. Adding some glitter and some sparkly things to make the finished product sparkly.
Very fun.
I love it. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And as I said, this will be up on our YouTube channel. Please join our newsletter to find out about upcoming workshops. And if you have any questions, shoot us an email. You can email hello@mcasantabarbara.org. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.